Welcome to Carib Gold Olga. This is News Flash. What's going on in the news today? Well, out there in Atlanta, Georgia, we have a wrongful death. The person who was unalive is Deacon Hallman. So, according to Fox 5 Atlanta News, the family of this church going man, this deacon, now wants the body cam to be released. The officer in question was fired a few days ago. So, according to Fox News, 62-year-old Johnny Hallman was heading home from Bible study the 9th of August the 10th. Then he got into a minor traffic accident at the intersection of Cunningham Place and Joseph E. Lowry Boulevard. Atlanta Police Department said that when Officer Kimborough arrived at the scene, Deacon Hallman refused to sign the traffic ticket and resisted arrest. Subsequently, Officer Timborough tasered him, tackled him down to the ground after there was a scuffle. After members of Hallman's family saw the body cam, they said it's not the real story, it's not the full story. The family said nothing was mentioned about him being knocked to the ground, tasered, and although he was saying he could not breathe, no assistance was given. The family also said this did not have to happen because clearly the videotape shows where he was willing to sign the ticket after he and the officer had a heavy discussion concerning the ticket. After reviewing the cam footage, the daughter said, "You see, my daddy was trying to sign the ticket, but the officer would not allow him to do so. My father is asking for help as his face is in the concrete." And like George Floyd, Hallman was saying, "I can't breathe." So it was an eerie reminder of what happened to Floyd. And you can hear my father saying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." This is what one of the daughters said. Her name is Arnitra. So what was supposed to be a routine traffic stop turned into an unalivement. So now the family is calling for an investigation, and hundreds of people joined the family in a march in Atlanta on Saturday. So attorney Molly Davis spoke first, and then attorney Harold Spence spoke, representing the family, and they laid out the facts of the case. Let's take a listen.
Good afternoon. I'm attorney Molly Davis of the Davis Bozeman Johnson Law Firm, and we thank you for coming out this afternoon so that we have an opportunity to respond to the recent termination of Officer Kimbrough by the Atlanta Police Department. We have with us family of Deacon, Chairman Deacon Johnny Holloman Sr. We also have organizers and students and community activists who have stood with this family. It has now been 2 months. On August 10th, this tragedy began for this family. On August 10th, it was that night that this deacon, coming from a Bible study, was in a minor traffic accident, called for police, waited for police as any good citizen would, and then was ultimately assaulted, forced to the ground, tased, punched, and killed by Officer Kimbrough. And so we want to continue to center this family. We've asked for Anitra Holloman to be right here in between us because we want the focus to be on this family and what they have lost. It's not about the lawyers. It's not about the organizers. It's not about anyone other than this family and our support for them. And so we're honored to represent a family that has shown the courage and the resiliency. We live in communities that tell us not to speak up, not to go against law enforcement, not to challenge this system. But this family has challenged this system, and the community has rallied behind them. We have pastors here. We have community organizers. We have students who have heard their call and their cry for help. That night, Deacon Holloman yelled out, "Help me." Think about it. That someone who has called the police and waited for them, but when he's encountered by the police, while he's being assaulted by the police, he has to yell out, "Help me." That's the absurdity of what happened this family has made and the community has supported. Today, one of them have been met. The 4 demands have been cleared. Release the tape. Release the tape. We've been clear about that. This family has wanted that because of the way their father has been depicted in initial police reports and press releases. Even up until today, the same narrative is being parroted by the Atlanta Police Department in their release about him being combative, resisting arrest, and all of these narratives that make him seem as though he was the criminal, when we have said from the very beginning that the only criminal that night was Officer Kimbrough. And the fact that they will continue to state this narrative is both sad and unfortunate, and it's very telling as to how far they will go to slander this good man's name. The second demand has been that this officer be terminated. And we know that having done this, our firm having done this kind of civil rights work for many years, that it's not common that the officer is terminated. There are people right now who are still on the job after having killed a citizen of Georgia, right in this, as we speak today. And so we recognize this as a victory for this family, but with many more to come. The third thing was that this officer needed to be arrested. And while we wish no one to be placed in the very dangerous confines of the Fulton County Jail, if that's where they take criminals, that's where he must go. And then the fourth and final is the full, complete prosecution of this officer until he is convicted and ultimately sentenced. Those have been the 4 demands. The family's been consistent on those demands, and this community has backed them. I want to say before Attorney Spence addresses the Atlanta Police Department statement that we thank the people of Atlanta. We're not talking about the city. We thank the people who have come now to 3 different marches and protests. The first one being just days after they lost their father, and those organizers, some of whom are here today, have been standing with this family for 2 months. The second one was when the students at the Atlanta University Center, Spelman, Morehouse, Clark Atlanta students, Georgia State, Emory students came and marched from CAU all the way to CNN. And then finally, the family asked the community to come out and march with them. And that march was from a park near where Mr. Holloman lived, as we walked past where he ultimately took his last breath, and then on to City Hall. And so we thank the people. We give credit to the people. We know that it's power with the people. That is what our firm has been based on. That is not just the lawyers, but it requires the people having an elevated consciousness about this system that continues to oppress largely Black, brown, and poor people. And so with that, we're grateful. We lift up, I invite Attorney Harold Spence, our law partner who has been working on this litigation for this, to share his thoughts as it relates to the statement that was provided by the Atlanta Police Department. Attorney Spence.
If you're coming onto the page, don't forget to hit the like bell and subscribe. The GBI is also investigating. GBI stands for Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
I invite Attorney Harold Spence, our law partner who has been working on this litigation for this, to share his thoughts as it relates to the statement that was provided by the Atlanta Police Department. Attorney Spence.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Harold Spence. I'm a partner with the Davis Bozeman Johnson law firm. We were elated today when we heard that Officer Kimbrough had been terminated from his employment with the City of Atlanta's Police Department. Immediately, we were curious as to what the basis of that termination would be. When we read the police chief's statement telling us what the basis of that termination was, quite frankly, we were a little deflated. The statement said that the officer was terminated because he failed to have a supervisor on the scene at the time he began efforts to effect the arrest of Deacon Holloman. Are you kidding me? Because he didn't have a supervisor on the scene? Again, that's why we believe it's even more incumbent that this video be released. Because I guarantee you that when you see this video, your thought won't be, where was the supervisor? Why didn't he call the supervisor? You'll be asking yourself, why wasn't there some mention of the leg sweep that took this deacon to the ground? Why wasn't there some mention of the brutalizing that he took, the physical brutalizing that he took at the hands of this officer? Why wasn't there some mention of his repeated pleas, I can't breathe, that grew increasingly in desperation? Why wasn't there some mention of that? Why wasn't there some mention of the repeated tasing of Deacon Holloman? Not a word. Instead, we're told that he got fired because he didn't summon a supervisor to the scene. So it's this kind of technical gamesmanship where you achieve a laudable end in terminating him, but at the same time, you don't address the real problems. That wasn't why Deacon Holloman died, because there wasn't a supervisor there that night. He died because this officer, this obsessed officer, brutalized him, a 23-year-old brutalizing a 62-year-old elder. That's why he died. So if we're going to be transparent and honest, because we want to have better relations between citizens and the police, we got to be not just transparent, we got to be honest about what happened and why this officer got fired. I'm quite curious to hear the chief explain why there's no mention of those other factors that I just talked about. Why the only basis for this officer's termination, at least that has been publicly disclosed, is that there was no supervisor there. Stop playing these shell games. Let's be honest. Let's acknowledge what happened. And like Attorney Davis, I was disappointed as well when appended to the chief's statement was a prior statement that the city had released. This prior statement talked about Deacon Holloman being combative. That's just not true. Him not following directions, that's just not true. He never refused to do anything that the officer asked him to do. And so we're assuming that by the time the city put out this official statement, that they had actually had a chance to view the video. But notwithstanding the presumptive effort by them to view the video, what did they do? They put out a false narrative that smears Deacon Holloman. And it's a narrative that will be clearly and unequivocally refuted by the video once it's released. We've seen a lot of videos since 2020. While this video perhaps is not as graphic as that in which George Floyd was killed, it does share commonality with the George Floyd video. The killing is equally senseless. Made no sense. And that's what the chief's statement doesn't address. The senselessness of what happened and how it could have been avoided. And it should have been avoided. We shouldn't even be here today. This should have been a routine matter that involved the deacon being given a citation, being allowed to go home, and he would have continued his life. Yet, he ended up dying on a cold Atlanta street on August 10th, 2023. It's sad, it's unfortunate. While we celebrate this victory, we are trying to change the system that creates people like Officer Kimbrough.
That's right.
And this system gets perpetuated when you have official findings for somebody's termination that don't address the underlying facts of what caused someone's death. And the chief of police's statement does not address the underlying irrefutable facts that this video will establish. Again, we're grateful for the termination, but let's not just be transparent. city of Atlanta. Let's be honest as well.
As Attorney Spence has pointed out, Deacon Holloman should have been given a ticket, and he should have appeared in court. In fact, he was scheduled to be in court on yesterday, but he couldn't appear, so I had to. And so when I appeared, here's how the case was dismissed. And I think it's important to note that his charge was improper lane change. His charge was improper lane change.
So guys, let me know in the comment section about what you think about this case. This is another wrongful death, another cop shooting an unarmed civilian. But it's different from George Floyd's case because although the deacon said, I cannot breathe, I can't breathe, the cop who did the shooting was a young black cop. So because the way the deacon was unalive, a lot of people are now crying out again and calling for police reform across the board. Because the shootings of unarmed black men is not only the white officers are doing it, it's also the black police officers. It's a culture that's in the police department that needs to be overhauled. So drop your comments. I'd like to know what you think about this case. I close with a famous quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality.
Rest in peace, Deacon Johnny Holloman Sr. I'm over and out. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like bell and subscribe if you haven't done so as yet. Thank you.